While Silk Road had its main antagonist, the online drug kingpin Ross Ulbricht, unbeknownst to most, there was a further architect of a prodigious larceny who found a loophole in Silk Road's Bitcoin payment processing system. This is the anecdote of the man who went against the grain and outsmarted his drug dealer in arguably one of the biggest heists in cryptocurrency history. At the cusp of the trial of Ross Ulbricht on May 29, 2015, he was convicted and handed a life sentence without parole. At his sentencing, the court became acutely aware that from 2nd February 2011 and 2nd October 2013, it's estimated that 1.5 million transactions over Silk Road involving 9.9 million bitcoins, which generated commissions of approximately 640,000 bitcoins for Silk Road. Thus, the court ordered that all the 9.9 million in bitcoin was directly forfeitable to the government as a process of money laundering. But there's one key problem with this court directive. The government did not know the whereabouts of all the Bitcoin. The US approximated that 50,000 Bitcoins were missing, and thus it began the insatiable penchant to fully account for the Bitcoins. It would take the government, in concerted effort with the IRS, 7 years to trace Bitcoins to a man who managed to outmeet the devil himself, James Zhong. James Zhong is a technoid who attended the University of Georgia, where he earned his stripes in computer science. Given that he was a technophile, he would later on tout a state-of-the-art computer system and would dabble in a bustling dark web black market that catered to a hedonistic lifestyle. In 2009, James Zhong began Bitcoin mining, in which he bought 6 Bitcoins at $12, which later would be compounded to 26 Bitcoins. He would go on to tap onto Silk Road's third eye in 2012 and would ride that way for approximately 7 years, in which he amassed billions in wealth. In the paradigm shift, he had a new lease of life in a damning philosophy that he could ascribe to. We all have the 24-hour script. He stated, "I have no sympathy for these free shit people. I grew up broke as hell, and in high school I taught myself software development. You have the internet, and any skill in the world is there for you to learn for free." As he grew accustomed to his new opulent lifestyle, a stark difference from his childhood, he would be no stranger to law enforcement, as in 2014 he would be arrested for a DUI, and subsequently in 2016, in a now expunged court document, he was equally apprehended for cocaine possession in Georgia. His life would take a tangent as the government was tipped off in 2019 following a reported burglary distress call from a residential home that belonged to James Zhong. James Zhong told the police that $400,000 in cash was stolen, equally a USB thumb drive which contained personal information. The police found it peculiar that $400,000 in cash was stashed in a briefcase in the house. The IRS was now deeply entrenched in the case due to the large sum of money stashed in the house. The IRS was equally investigating 50,000 bitcoins that was missing in Ross Ulbricht's forfeiture. They analyzed the computer databases of Silk Road transaction records. Upon observing the servers, they obtained account ledgers of all user activities, including deposits and withdrawals, Bitcoin transactions, and Bitcoin addresses, which included information on users' accounts, in which they came across James Zhong's account. These servers ultimately would lead the trail of the most prolific cryptocurrency heist back to James Zhong. On September 2012, James Zhong signed up an account on the infamous Silk Road. The crypto deities must have been on his side, as he would stumble upon a glitch on Silk Road's Bitcoin payment processing system. He discovered a withdrawal processing flaw. He noted that if in quick succession he executed a series of withdrawals, he would make much more out of Silk Road's addresses than he had deposited. Fully cognizant of the vulnerability in the withdrawal payment processing system, he created 9 user accounts with different usernames. This included the Tormentor, Saxo, Dubber, Gribs, Silky, and Amsh. He funded these accounts with deposits of between 200 and 2,000 bitcoins per address. On 19 September 2012, using the account The Tormentor, he deposited 500 bitcoins into the account. Less than 5 seconds later, he executed 5 withdrawals of the 500 bitcoins which he had deposited, which resulted in him gaining 2,000 bitcoins. Within the next 24 minutes, the Tormentor deposited withdrawals of 500 bitcoins and made a killing with 1,000 bitcoins. On that single day, he had made away with 3,000 bitcoins. His insatiable appetite just grew. The next day, James Zhong used a different account, Gribs, and made a deposit of 350 bitcoins. Executing bitcoins had become second nature to James Zhong. He thus executed 3 withdrawals and made 700 bitcoins. He intimated the same scheme using another Silk Road user ID 2C0EED0345. He deposited 2,000 bitcoins and executed a series of 8 withdrawals in rapid succession in which he gained 14,000 bitcoins. On September 24, 2012, using the account Dabba, he made one deposit that transmutated into massive gain after executing 50 bitcoin withdrawals. Given this elaborate scheme, James Zhong, who had made an initial deposit of 200 bitcoins, was now a billionaire holding approximately 50,000 bitcoins. On the same day, he funneled his 50,000 bitcoins into 2 bitcoin addresses. Thus, one address held 40,000 bitcoins that he had obtained from accounts such as Grapes Silky and user ID 2C0EED0345, while the remaining 10,000 bitcoins was obtained from the accounts Dabba and Saxor. Zhong amassed 50,000 bitcoins without ever listing any item or service on Silk Road. In August 2017, the crypto deities would favor him again as Bitcoin announced a hard fork coin. The Bitcoin was split into 2 cryptocurrencies, that is, the traditional Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. This split mandated that any Bitcoin address that had a Bitcoin balance now had the exact balance on Bitcoin blockchain and Bitcoin Cash. This means that James Zhong, who owned 50,000 bitcoins, would in addition gain another 50,000 Bitcoin Cash. Upon receiving the 50,000 Bitcoin Cash correlated to the split, he endeavored to disguise ownership as he would funnel the 50,000 Bitcoin Cash through an overseas cryptocurrency exchange in which he gained its equivalent in traditional Bitcoin, an estimated 3,500 Bitcoins. In total, James Zhong now possessed 53,500 Bitcoins. He would obfuscate his ownership with mixers, and equally he transferred 10,000 bitcoins into 10 bitcoin addresses with 1,000 bitcoins cash. The IRS had now found the mastermind behind this heist. On November 9, 2019, the feds executed a search warrant of James Zhong's 2 residences in Georgia. The feds seized 50,491 out of the 53,500 Silk Road linked bitcoins in an underground floor safe and on a single board computer that was under blankets in a popcorn tin stored in a bathroom closet. The officers recovered $661,900 stored in an underground floor safe and a kitchen drawer. The feds equally recovered 25 cashless coins which had an approximate value of 174 bitcoins from an underground floor safe. They equally recovered 8 silver colored bars and 4 gold colored bars. Enforcement agency equally recovered 11 additional bitcoins that weren't traceable to Silk Road. The FBI raid on James Zhong's house was successful as they had seized 50,491 bitcoins, which in 2019 had the estimated value of $3.35 billion. Following James Zhong's arrest, he was facing about 20 years in prison. However, on 4th November 2022, James Zhong would waive his indictment and would cut a deal with the prosecutors, in which he would surrender 1,004 bitcoins to the government that wasn't linked to Silk Road. Through James' attorneys, on 25th March 2022, James voluntarily surrendered 825 bitcoins. Subsequently, he surrendered 35 bitcoins. On April 27th, 2022, he surrendered 23 more bitcoins. On April 28th, 2022, he surrendered 115 bitcoins. On June 8th, 2022, he surrendered 4 more bitcoins. As part of James Zhong's surrender, the government equally, as part of a court-ordered forfeiture, seized James Zhong 80% interest in Re&Ad LLC, which is a Memphis-based company with substantial real estate holdings. As part of the deal, James Zhong pleaded guilty to wire fraud contrary to Title 18 United States Code Section 1343 N2. On March 31, 2023, the U.S. District Attorney recommended a 24-month sentence in light of James Zhong's cooperation. It's alleged that James Zhong is currently serving. On April 14, 2023, James Zhong was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison.